on the next 2 years and beyond. An ambitious plan to, quote, making Kenya a first world country would see the government introduce a record 5 trillion budget to cover for grand infrastructure projects ranging from roads to airports to dams and even rail transport. From the president's speech to the reality on the ground, how would that sit? Earlier in the week, ODM celebrated its 20th anniversary in the coastal city of Mombasa, where a clash of currents dominated proceedings, with the party leadership splitting in the middle over, among other things, its future in the broad-based government. Sniper shots were taken, as were knives in the back, and at some point, some matters were being referred back to families. Broadly, we assess the events and the signals coming out of the ODM house. On Jamila's memo tonight, the distance between starvation in a village in Marsabit and its leaders, some operating from as far as Nairobi. On Sam's Sense tonight, turning the spotlight on the dark spaces around the public-private partnerships drive by government, Adani style. On Bonya's Bone, picking a bone with a section of clergy operating around the road to Damascus roundabout. And on My Take tonight, Kenya's long campaign journey between November 27th and 2027, the price of permanent campaigns. And on Kaikai's Kicker, Wakili, a quick one. The gang is here.
Today, I will also place before you not just a vision, but a national project that is realistic, grounded, and entirely within our reach. A vision not just to grow, but to transform. A roadmap not merely to move forward, but to rise. To rise from developing to developed. To rise from potential to reality, to rise from promise to prosperity, to rise from the third to the first world, to rise finally into the Kenya we have long imagined, the Kenya we deserve.
And welcome to the program. The hashtag is NewsGang at Citizen TV Kenya, and the SMS line is 22422. We are a different bench tonight, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. But first, the President's third State of the Nation address today. Ambitious in many respects. Jay, your thoughts?
Thank you, Yvonne. I think I'd want to first say that I like the belief that President William Ruto has in this country, in himself, and probably the people he works around with, because this is very ambitious. And I once read a book called The Burdens, and in that book it says too much ambition might break a man. Fortunately, I want to look at it from where he's taking it and retrace the steps back to what we had, the Vision 2030. If you look at Vision 2030, it had about 4 key pillars that looked at the economy, looked at the social issues, looked at the political and governance issues around this country. And basically, it was to make Kenya, one, a higher income nation, make people live a quality life, have a very democratic and accountable structure in governance. And this has not been achieved. And here we are aiming to become a first world country. Suffice to say that the reality of all these plans, as stated by President William Ruto, are not what the common person would really want their government of the day to do for them. And therefore, there's a huge gap between the vision of the president and the reality or what the people want at this point. It would be important to look at some of the things that he's looking at. Look at food security, doing in excess of 50 mega dams, over 1,000 water pans. Look at energy, generating 10,000 megawatts.
Yeah.
Look at infrastructure, about 2,000 kilometers of road, and the amount of money that is going to take. I believe the way Vision 2030 was structured could have been the ideal way of going through this, where the vision bearers are spread across the country, and the men and women that have looked through, and the process has ownership. Because the other thing that Vision 2030 did, which I think the president in his vision may not be doing, is that Vision 2030 looked at the reality that there would be changes in government and government structures. And therefore, they did not lump everything into a short span of time, trying to achieve what the president says he really wants to achieve. So there is need to relook at this, evaluate it, and see whether it is feasible. Because looking at the presentation he did, looking at the numbers in terms of financial implication and the structure in which he wants to achieve this, it might present a very good picture, but achieving it probably would be something that might not be. So I don't know, Sam, what you think about this, but for me, that would be my assessment of this.
For sure. Of course, the president speaking about many things. I just wanted to refer to what the Constitution says of the agenda of today, which is contained in Article of the Constitution, that the president is required that once every year must report in an address to the nation on all measures taken and the progress achieved in the realization of the national values referred to Article 10. And then he must publish in the Gazette the details of the measures and progress under subparagraph 1, and then submit a report for debate to the National Assembly on the progress made in fulfilling the international obligation. So if you had to look at that very important aspect of tabling a report on the progress made in achieving Article 10. So what does Article 10 say? Of the national values and principles of governance. The national values bind every state officer, public officer, and all persons in, I'll quote this, making or implementing public policy decisions. That vision that the president was talking about is part of public policy decisions, the process of making and, of course, eventually implementation, and says that some of those values are patriotism, national values, sharing and devolution of power, the rule of law, but also importantly, democracy and participation of the people. When you listen to the president talking about his ambition for a first world country, it sort of comes off as his own ideas. The past few weeks, he has spent communicating to the country at public rallies on top of cars, saying that he has discussed with other leaders, including the late Raila Odinga, with the fourth president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and they have agreed that the idea here is to take Kenya to the first world. So if that is the decision that he has arrived at, what is the participation of the people? And the people are the people. The people are not advisors of the president. It is not the cabinet. It is not the president and his office. It is the people. So is this the start of that public participation by reporting to Parliament? But then again, the address today was supposed to be a report of what has been done in attaining the national values and, of course, the international obligations of the country as per the Constitution as it provides. But that does not stop the president from airing his ambitions. And I look at it and I think the race to 2027 has officially begun with what the president said. And why do I say that? As you heard the president enumerate the number of projects that he is going to execute, or rather, that the country needs to execute, because I do not think entirely it's his work. You could see the members of parliament that are in the house, and I have to say also that if you look at the attendance, there's one side of the house that was fairly empty. Not many members were in attendance. But as soon as he was talking about listing the roads that will be constructed, everyone was, or most people were up on their feet and chanting two-term, two-term, two-term. So really, I look at it as an ambition presented to the people's representatives as a launching pad to the race 2027, making promises, but then you wonder, what happened to the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, which was the plan? It had 5 pillars. Now we have 4 new pillars. What is the progress of the 5 agenda, the 5-point agenda that was? Whether it's about inclusion, financial inclusion, if it's the question of Hustler Fund, the promise was 50 billion shillings every year. We are officially in the 4th year, so we have already done 3 years. Ideally, mathematically, 150 billion shillings should have been made available to the Hustler Fund, to the hustlers themselves. If you have to look at what has been happening, the report, according to the president, is that 80 billion shillings has already been disbursed to 7 million Kenyans, as he says, and also says that 7 million Kenyans have been taken off the
credit reference bureaus.
Yes, exactly, the credit reference bureaus, where people could not access loans because they were in bad score. Now, that was financial inclusion. There was an aspect of food security. How well are we doing that? If you look at the figures that he's citing, that we have turned from subsidizing consumption to subsidizing production. He tells us that maize production has grown to 67 million bags. This is a claim that has been repeated by so many people, including Geoffrey Ruto, when he was Member of Parliament of Mbeere North, now a Cabinet Secretary. It has never been backed with facts. The President said today, he now brings this to the floor of the House, that 67 million bags have been harvested in the year 2024. The data, according to the same government, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, it's saying that actually we just harvested about 47 million bags of maize, contrary to what the President is saying as 67. So a reflection of the President on what he has done, but also what he's hoping to do. If you are to look at that aspect of the 50 mega dams, during the 2022 campaigns, the promises was that the government would build 100 dams, serious dams. Now that number has been reduced to 50 mega dams and 200 medium and small dams. The plan is good. The ambition is good because you want to irrigate the farms and grow more food for food sufficiency or food security in the country. But how do we get there? The other aspect that we must look at, so how do you make those decisions? Is it based on a manifesto? Is it based on wishes of the government of the day? Because again, the question of 5 trillion shillings, Jamila, and saying how it's going to be funded, how do we exactly achieve that? So I think there's so much work to be done right there. But at the same time, if you have to look at the Vision 2030 and the aspect of the economic pillar that was hoping to industrialize this country, where is manufacturing in this plan? Yeah. Because if you're hoping to get there and you're hoping to grow the skills and innovation, that cannot happen without manufacturing. Manufacturing is the only thing that can give us jobs because we have seen that in the service industry, we can only depend on the private sector. If you're talking about the public goods, whether it's teaching, security, health, the government, yes, will step in, but look what we're having. In the counties, they're talking about overly populated in terms of the employment opportunities. The revenues we are collecting are not sufficient to employ new people. So the only avenue is in perhaps mining, perhaps manufacturing. I don't hear the president very clear on that. So yes, we might get different ways of financing programs or projects to build all those roads that you're talking about, but you still have no jobs. So you can imagine having so much road infrastructure, logistics were well invested, but you don't have jobs. SGR is a good case example. We have it from Mombasa all the way to Suswa. How many jobs in manufacturing has that facilitated for us to say that indeed there's a real impact? I think even if this is at the initial stages, there's no clarity of thought of what that strategy is supposed to be, Jamila.
And today the president talked a lot about what we are saying about Kenya can leap to a fast world. It can be a fast world country. Let's listen to what the president said, and then we continue with this discussion.
Kenya still punches way below its true weight. This nation has the talent, the resources, and the spirit not just to improve, but to leap and to make the transition from a developing country to a developed one within our lifetime. That is why I speak today with full conviction that history has summoned this generation, our generation, at such a time as this, to a higher purpose. Some eras are shaped by events. Others are defined by the decisions a nation makes. And today, Kenya is called to make such a decision, to finish the journey our forebears began and finally turn our long-held potential into lived reality.
You know, just looking through about what the characteristics of a first world country are. One is economic development, high level of industrialization and economic development with advanced economies and high per capita income. Infrastructure that is well developed, such as reliable power grids, efficient transportation networks, and strong internet connectivity. High standard of living for its citizens, measured by factors like life expectancy, education levels, and access to quality healthcare. And political and economic stability with a strong rule of law and a stable government. The president talked about the Asian tigers in his speech, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan, and how they achieved economic success, and how he's said in the past that he wants to get there, that those countries were at the same level almost as Kenya during independence, but they went far, they grew and did all that. And it's through a combination of export-led growth, heavy investment in education and infrastructure, strong government economic planning, and disciplined macroeconomic policies. You know, all these things, when you hear them, they sound like things that we can do, things that Kenya can start doing to achieve the standards that first world countries or the Asian tigers did. But there's a word here that says disciplined. Disciplined macroeconomic policies, discipline in investment, discipline in, you know, all those things. But I worry that as a country we do not have that discipline that is required for you to get to this point that we're talking about. Because this, as Sam pointed out, for fourth year of this administration, imeanza. And there were plans that were made in the beginning. There was the plan. Where, at what point were those abandoned to start this new one? Because I'm thinking this is towards the end of your term. We need to start seeing tangible achievements. He mentioned quite a number. But then I'm sure in the beginning they had short-term plans, medium-term plans, long-term plans, things that were supposed to have been achieved by the end of the fifth year, before the elections. How far are we with those? Because the way I've been listening, things keep changing quite a bit from one year to another. Plans that were originally made either abandoned or things have already changed. Because you talk about the Hustler Fund and how much 150 billion should have been collected by now. That is just one example. There's nothing there. So, in my opinion, maybe we should start looking at what the original plan was, like you talk about bottom-up economic model. Where did things change? How can we correct it? Because for me, I'm thinking this is too late in this term to start introducing something as ambitious as this. I know he says I think it's a 10-year plan and all. That's fine. But then you should want to at least do something that would make a difference quickly, rather than this huge, ambitious project that will cost 5 trillion. That we don't know if next year, by the time we have our next State of the Nation address, tutakuwa tunasema tumefika wapi na huu mpango ambao tunao sasa. Because what we're talking about now is different from what we talked about just a year ago. So I feel like this is too much. 4 years into the administration. By now we should be talking about we've done 60% of what we had promised when we started. And the remaining 40% we're going to achieve it this way, not introducing something new.
Yeah, Jamila, as you mentioned, the issue of discipline, fiscal consolidation is, I'm sure, a term we keep hearing about in this country. Revenue collection, upping that. But also, when it comes to discipline with our expenditure, because that's something we've been unable to do. Discipline when it comes to corruption. These Asian tigers that we refer to have been very strict with corruption. It's about closing all of those loopholes. And as we've heard of all these ambitious plans, my one question, and ambition is great, and it's good. I mean, Vision 2030 was seen to be ambitious when it was first put out there. Where does the empowerment rallies that we see, how does that fit in with this ambitious 4-point plan? because there's millions of shillings that are being thrown in just about every village, off of every rooftop, in every marketplace. Where is that in this? Because it seems like we say one thing on paper and we do a couple of other things. And you see, it's things like those. It's 20 million shillings donations to churches, which are important. But when you look at it, there's quite a bit of money that perhaps could go to those 50 dams that we're talking about, that could go to those 2,000 kilometers of roads. But where does it go? And how do you account for that in an ambitious plan such as this one? Yes, you're empowering young people, you're empowering women groups and others, but how does that fit into such a grand plan? Because what we do in this country is we've got grand plans that are made on podiums such as what we have in Parliament, in State House and others, but what we see happening is a completely different thing. For me, the one thing that could make all of this a reality would be very strict discipline, cut down on corruption, and that's usually hardly something you hear about being discussed. Absolute zero tolerance. You mop up so much money that we talk about in corruption. Our expenditure, where is it? What do we need to cut down? Once we do those things, you free up money. Where in all of these plans, by the way, how much are the pending bills from the national government? Over $500 billion?
Yeah, it's over 500
yes.
billion.
And that's yet to be. And that's on the national level. What about at the counties? They also owe people money. We've seen stories of people in distress because they're owed money. All of this needs to flow back into the economy. And I'm not denying that we need a blueprint and we need a vision, but at the heart of it, none of this means anything. I think, Linus, you were saying earlier about a different conversation we'd had earlier in the week about talent without discipline, about all of these big plans without discipline. If you don't have that, then all of these lofty plans are just that. And on that note, Wakili, this is your moment to make your first submission. Here on this bench, we will call ourselves a bench for the sake of this one. Wakili, your thoughts?
So, or does that make you guys a kangaroo court?
We know a good lawyer, so be careful what you say about us.
Yes. I think on this, we all sound like a really good choir. And every Kenyan who means well for this country would agree with what is being said around the table, not just here, but also some of the things that the president is talking about. And I want to pick one thing that he said today. He said that Kenya is punching below its weight. For me, that came as a massive relief that, so government is aware that we are punching below our weight. And when it comes to the economic aspirations, we keep talking about the Asian tigers. But statehood is more than just economy. There is diplomacy. Yeah. And when you look at how we've been positioning ourselves around the region, we've not only been punching below our weight, we've actually been losing weight very rapidly. We've also been losing weight economically. Now, some of the bad manners you are referring to are really costing us, because we don't need to talk about Asian tigers. Just look around the region and see nations that used to be to depend on us. We were the benchmark for development issues. What are they doing right now? You just need to go to Ethiopia and see the kind of airport they have. Think about Rwanda. You are thinking about a mini Singapore that doesn't talk about its Singapority. And we hear talking about it every time. Yet, did I hear the president also talk about this generation being the generation that needs to do something? There is a problem. When we had the young people coming out of the streets last year, it's because they think there's something terribly wrong with how this generation of current leaders is handling issues. And so there's a lot of housekeeping that needs to happen at a political stage and at the space that President William Ruto and his leadership operates. We've spoken about the issue of the Asian tigers. With the Asian tigers, I think the model was around a strong bureaucratic and technocratic government. The state is built around meritocracy. When are we going to face those questions of meritocracy in the way we form government? Because if we were to audit, if the president was to then audit using the Asian Tigers model, and specifically the Singapore model, look at Lee Kuan Yew's government and compare with the UDA, Kenya Kwanza administration. Go head to head, you know, so that you see, you know, to go to the first world, there's a script. We can't jump the queue. We can't, for example, talk about first world, yet when, well, I come up, the route I use coming here, every morning I see donkeys in an urban center supplying water with jerrycans. Yeah. And the donkey drawn carts.
Wow.
Now, the gap between that, the distance between that donkey cart and the first world is so huge.
Yeah.
Yet, it doesn't require the president talking to others. It just requires a disciplined, functioning central government. Look, politicians like a strong state. They want to exercise power. They want to stretch muscles. They do it when you have demonstrations, they tear gas people that are not even armed. Now, when the real space where you should really express your muscles, like social order, like meritocracy, we are not finding a lot of that expressing itself in this country. And he says, he talks about our human resource. Perfect. It's very, very true. But what is the Asian model about? It really invested in its people. What have we seen in the last few months? We had two sectors that are really unstable. That is education and health. Yeah. And we've noticed that the president is quite shy or reserved when it comes to those two sectors. He's more comfortable with housing, build more houses and roads and all that. And when it came to the 38-day strike by lecturers, he said, CS Ogamba, you will handle that. You see, if we do things that affect our best resource, which is the human resources, then it will affect a lot of other things. So, and when you look at previous leaders, and even before we leave the boundaries of this country, you look at what Mwai Kibaki and Daniel Arap Moi did. The one sector they never ever allowed any games around is education, because they know that is the future. That is the quality of the country going forward. In fact, those are the people that will get in the first world, because these are the ones who will now do the foundation, and then the older generations will get there. So there's so much that is malfunctioning in our current software. And that's why we all really wish to get there. But we have to remember that it starts with the basics. We've spoken about the dueling of Rironi Mau Summit
Road.
Now those are first world things. Highways like expressways, roads that where cars will go that way and others will come. Basic issues that actually you don't need to speak about. Now we spent 7 to 8 years between the feasibility studies and the time the launch, which will happen next week. There'll be 8 years would have lapsed, because this generation of politicians have done things exactly the same way. And you know what? Another big story that is waiting to happen as we launch Rironi Mau Summit. Have we thought of Mombasa, Nairobi?
There have been talks on that one for
that is our second biggest city. And our leaders do benchmarking. You go to a place like Turkey, between Ankara and Istanbul, and even smaller towns. Dual carriage, by the way, is not it's not magic. It is where we are supposed to be. And in the absence of it, what is happening in Nakuru, the Nakuru Highway will happen. More road accidents, a lot of time wasted. Traffic jams and all that. So, for me, what I would like to hear the president do and say is, let's return to the basics. Fix the software. Get donkeys out of the water supply chain in urban centers. Use pipes, for example. Pipe that water. Do dual carriage roads, not as some aspirational thing, but it's a basic norm. It's a basic norm. This country started with a population of I think 12 to 15 million in the 60s. Now Nakuru Highway cannot handle that. We have more people making these movements. So if I were the president, you will do a return to the basics. First of all, do what really the simple things that have been done for nations to get off. And I want to just refer to something that Sam said, which is also what informs the journey to development. Our economy, our production, what can we say about our capacity to produce export products? Except for horticulture, in my view, we have not been doing well in others. And we need to, that's where the improvement needs to happen. We still import sugar, and we've had the president saying, at some point we will be self-reliant. We need that. We need to really focus on production, local production, and aim to export stuff. Only then, actually, that's what has built economies elsewhere. But more importantly, we need to go back to basics. Some of these things that we do and say, and I need to just mention this. Look at any new road made these days, even in urban centers here in Nairobi, they don't have a sidewalk. So
no bicycle lane.
No bicycle lane, no pedestrian.
No pedestrian.
Even in Karen. And you wonder, okay, first world, our first world thing must start with our mind. The head must get there before some of this noise that we are seeing. We need a mindset shift, especially in the way we do things. Even suppliers, not suppliers, can I call them contractors, external contractors? They have now gotten used to our low standards. They do some of I've seen roads that are done by foreign contractors, and I know that is not how they would do in their nations. But they know here you can you can do shortcuts, or you can actually eliminate that sidewalk for that money to go elsewhere. And these are the bad manners that we need to first deal with before we start talking about first world. First world must start with a mindset shift.
And just to add to that, one of the things that completely epitomizes a first world country, a strong sense of values, national values. What is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not. And some of that is set, quite frankly, at the top. And it would be good, I know sometimes it seems like it's something fluffy, but that is what cascades all the way down. That is what leads to zero tolerance on corruption, amongst other things. High, working standards, optimum working standards. We don't talk enough about that. Money is important, economy is important, all of that. But having a high value system, and that comes straight from the top. So you cannot be one day saying we're going to do all these great things, and the next day you are insulting people on rooftops. It doesn't quite work the same. But creating a value system that everybody lives by, where even the courts do not necessarily have to resolve every dispute. It becomes that as a community, as a nation, as a people, as a society, you're able to call out bad leadership, and people are accountable to themselves for the things that they do in those positions of leadership. And I believe national values is also one of the things that are supposed to be addressed in the State of the Nation address, right? Per the Constitution. Sam, as we take a break.
Right, and I think it's important that we focus on whatever the president is intending to do or is saying as our vision moving into the future, it for sure needs to be structured in a manner that is easy to follow so that we carry everyone on board. Because whatever it is, this bill of 5 trillion shillings will have implications not just on current generations but also future. So I know I've seen some draft legislation on the National Sovereign Wealth Fund and the infrastructure fund. So as this is being discussed or is being mentioned, there's every value that this has to be what you may want to call bipartisan sort of a discussion. And yes, even if the president says that he's been consulting the political class, this is bigger than 2-term versus 1-term. It is bigger than the current administration. It is bigger than the second. And I think the best way to look at it is to listen to the Wiper Party leader, Kalonzo Musyoka, who made some reactions to what the president was speaking and also his views about the future of the country.
They refuse to accept Rutopreneurship as the modus operandi. Our youth rejected the shift mismanagement that cost their loved ones access to healthcare services. Kenyans from across the country rejected the housing levy that is nothing short of a slush fund, a scam of the highest order. Of course, we'll be going on to clarify that as part of our agenda, we will not, of course, demolish those houses. They belong to Kenyans. We will, however, do away with housing levy, and William Ruto's government has amassed so much out of that, that will be money enough to complete even those houses. But we'll have to do away with the housing levy. More so, Kenyans are against the betrayal of Vision 2030. In its place today is bottom-up Rutoism, and one that you hear of being lauded across town today, if it's not already ongoing in Parliament, by a man who delivers nothing but despair.
In my view, that there shows you the problem of the political class steering this. Well, unfortunately, they have the right and mandate to govern when they're elected. But I think at conceiving such a plan, it should be beyond the political partyism that you will see in this country, and of course the fierce competition that you continue to see. It is a discussion that I think it's best that is approached in a structured manner, that people come together to decide, because you imagine that Vision 2030 was the product of a lot of consultation, and that was in 2008. Today, how many years is it? 17 years later, you don't hear a lot of people mentioning about it. Yet there's a board that sits to follow up on the processes. If you look at the website, there was tracking in the initial years, 2008 to 2012, 2012 to 2017. Since that time, there's no tracking that you find even on the website. So it is possible that an ambition or a vision or a political entity can actually collapse along the way because of political differences and our habits, that every political leader comes up with manifestos and promises that they want to do for the people that are usually outside of the framework that would have been agreed upon. I think the biggest manifesto in this country is the Constitution of Kenya that guides on how we are supposed to be governed, how projects are supposed to be arrived at, how programs are supposed to be implemented in a lot of transparency and accountability. If we really want to achieve this, then we must follow that Constitution to bring everyone on board. Imagine that a little contract of expanding the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport brought a lot of heat in this country. What would a 5 trillion program do to this country if you're not careful?
Let's take a break on that note. We have much more to discuss. When we come back, we'll talk about ODM at 20 and what the future of that looks like. This is Newsgang. We'll be right back.
Hallelujah, Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificates na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building and construction, motor vehicle mechanics, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty therapy, ICT and computer applications, hotel management and catering. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana na mwalimu mkuu David Simiyu kwenye +254724784150 ama +254736219864. Vilevile unaweza wasiliana na mkuu wa mawazo kwenye +254726939256. YMCA Kenya, training for today's industry. Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificates na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building and construction, motor vehicle mechanics, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty therapy, ICT and computer applications, hotel management and catering. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana na mwalimu mkuu David Simiyu kwenye +254724784150 ama +254736219864. Vilevile unaweza wasiliana na mkuu wa mawazo kwenye +254726939256. YMCA Kenya, training for today's industry. Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificates na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building and construction, motor vehicle mechanics, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty therapy, ICT and computer applications, hotel management and catering. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana na mwalimu mkuu David Simiyu kwenye +254724784150 ama +254736219864. Vilevile unaweza wasiliana na mkuu wa mawazo kwenye +254726939256. YMCA Kenya, training for today's industry. Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificates na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building and construction, motor vehicle mechanics, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty therapy, ICT and computer applications, hotel management and catering. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana na mwalimu mkuu David Simiyu kwenye +254724784150 ama +254736219864. Vilevile unaweza wasiliana na mkuu wa mawazo kwenye +254726939256. YMCA Kenya, training for today's industry. Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificates na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building and construction, motor vehicle mechanics, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty therapy, ICT and computer applications, hotel management and catering. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana na mwalimu mkuu David Simiyu kwenye +254724784150 ama +254736219864. Vilevile unaweza wasiliana na mkuu wa mawazo kwenye +254726939256. YMCA Kenya, training for today's industry. Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificate na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building and construction, motor vehicle mechanics, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty therapy, ICT and computer applications, hotel management and catering. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana na mwalimu mkuu David Simiyu kwenye +254724784150 ama +254736219864. Vilevile unaweza wasiliana na mkuu wa mawazo kwenye +254726939256. YMCA Kenya, training for today's industry. Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificate na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building and construction, motor vehicle mechanics, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty therapy, ICT and computer applications, hotel management and catering. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana na mwalimu mkuu David Simiyu kwenye +254724784150 ama +254736219864. Vilevile unaweza wasiliana na mkuu wa mawazo kwenye +254726939256. YMCA Kenya, training for today's industry. Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificate na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building and construction, motor vehicle mechanics, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty therapy, ICT and computer applications, hotel management and catering. Kwa maelezo zaidi wasiliana na mwalimu mkuu David Simiyu kwenye +254724784150 ama +254736219864. Vilevile unaweza wasiliana na mkuu wa mawazo kwenye +254726939256. YMCA Kenya, training for today's industry. Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificate na short courses.
Conversations that we've had on different platforms and of course speaking to different members of the ODM, we reveal to you the challenge that has been, because when she says that it is Raila Odinga who was managing the relationship between ODM and the broad-based government, you can see the sense of loss that since the absence of Raila Odinga, who is informing the sense of direction for the party when engaging with the broad-based government. And obviously also listening to the voices of the other leaders that spoke during that event, it shows you the challenges of the unity after Raila Odinga, that you find there's a lot of suspicion in members and how they're treating each other. You'll find a cabinet secretary like Hassan Joho saying that he should not be sacrificed. They should not be sacrificed for the decisions they've made before. Now, when you look at the law, to contextualize what Winnie Odinga was talking about, you're looking at the constitution of ODM, and it shows you that in Article 6.2 on the election of national officials, you go to the point where it says that all national officials other than the Secretary for Parliamentary Affairs and others shall be elected by the National Delegates Conference. And then again continues to say that in the event that the party leader is unable to discharge his or her duties by reason of many things, including death, then a special session of the National Delegates Conference would be called to elect a new party leader. Obviously, we know that no special National Delegates Convention has been called, and Gladys Wanga was explaining to Emmanuel Toh in an interview that an NDC takes a lot of time to organize, and therefore that's why the party leadership and also top officials of the party were confirmed in National Governing Council. So there's a question of how constitutional are those decisions, because last week on Thursday evening, as soon as most of the members of the party arrived in Mombasa, there was a National Governing Council that met, had a meeting to ratify the decisions of the National Executive Committee that is chaired by Gladys Wanga. That meeting resolved to confirm Dr. Oburu Oginga as the party leader, Gladys Wanga as the chairperson of the party, and the deputy party leaders in the name of Simba Arati, Abdul Somad Sharif, and Godfrey Osotsi. So the questions are, was the NGC, in this case National Governing Council, right to elect or to confirm this party leadership? There are those that say that it is confirmed pending the decision of the NDC. But ideally, what do you take to an NDC? Is it a confirmation hearing or it's an election? In an election means, is it universal suffrage where you have gone through nominations and you have a list of candidates that want to be perhaps the chairperson of ODM, or you just take the name of Gladys Wanga for confirmation? Obviously, that's a question for the members of the ODM to decide. Yeah. Would they have wanted to have Gladys Wanga facing other candidates, or do they want, when the NDC is called, you don't know when, they'll just be going there to confirm the leadership as it is? There has been different leaders who have said that the ODM constitution was actually amended in the year 2024 and changed a bit of the rules and some of those provisions that we are citing. The constitution of ODM as we know it is as amended in 2016. This amendment that is being touched on about 2024, we've been asking for that document. Nobody has delivered it. We have no information of such a document being filed with the Register of Political Parties. But then, such an amendment must be approved by a National Delegates Convention. Yeah. The last NDC was pre-2022 election, so no NDC has happened, and therefore such a constitutional amendment cannot have taken place because no NDC has been called. So the question is, are these decisions that were taken on Thursday evening binding on every member of the ODM? And then, whatever answer that is Winnie right to call for proper election of party officials? Does it mean she's opposed to Dr. Oburu Oginga? Perhaps not necessarily, but she would want to see the right procedure followed. Ideally, if a political party is seeking to win power, win elections, and therefore govern a country based on the Constitution of Kenya, you would expect that the decisions they make within their political party are in accordance with the Constitution of the party, but also respecting the Constitution of the country that also allows or requires democratic exercise of decisions that are being taken in a political party. So really, ODM party is finding itself in a situation of which way after Raila Odinga, but also how respectful should they be when it comes to following the constitution of the party. And remember, Yvonne, the constitution of the ODM provides for 2 positions of deputy party leader. Yeah, today we have 3 deputy party leaders in office. In an amendment supposedly that was created so as to accommodate as many regions as possible within the ODM strongholds. But is that decision constitutional according to the ODM constitution? Perhaps not. Let's listen to the party leader, Oburu Oginga, 2-3, talking about the things that he will fulfill.
Ulisikia mtoto yangu Winnie akisema ati Raila alikuwa hapo na sasa tutafute mwengine kusaidia kuendelesha hii broad based government. Ninamwambia hiyo na mtoto yangu tutaongea na yeye kinyumbani. Nitamwambia kinyumbani. Lakini hiki kiti ambacho nyinyi mnamenipatia ya kuongoza ODM, kuwa party leader ya ODM, nitaendelea vile Raila alikuwa anaendelea, na nimebeba hiyo. Nimebeba hiyo ngao na sitakuwa na uoga yoyote, na nitaendelea kutimiza yale yote ambayo ndugu yangu Raila alikuwa anataka zitimizwe.
So that's his pledge and his response to Winnie Odinga's call for an NDC. But just help us understand, Jay, you know, for lack of a better word, the forces that are at play and the different sides that are at play in ODM at the moment. Winnie is on one hand saying one thing. Oburu says we will discuss that in the home. But then we've also seen several other leaders who are seemingly, tugging in different directions. What's at stake here, and which are the different camps that are seemingly emerging?
Thank you. I think the first thing that comes out in black and white is that the exit of Raila Odinga left ODM exposed. And exposed in a manner that suggests that the party was largely being run on consensus, that every decision that needed to be made, people would sit, discuss, and agree, and move on to accommodate interests. And what is now coming to the fore is that there are people who probably might want to still stay with that format of making things or running the party, that we sit, agree, and find a comfortable position that accommodates all of us. And then there's a group that sits and asks the question, was it procedural? And the group that is asking, was it procedural, is largely the young, ambitious, and I dare say impatient members of the party. And that includes a number of young politicians within it, includes now the forces around Winnie Odinga, and many others. And that is why probably in the last 2 days we've seen a petition. We still don't know what it is anchored on, by some people claiming that they're young members of the ODM party who are asking the current party leader to resign because his appointment or selection was not procedural, that they want the party to follow its constitution, as Sam has read here. So these are forces that we will see, and the broader picture of this is that there's also the agenda of the 2027 general election. And how does ODM approach it? Because there is a group that feels the time is ripe, the mood on the ground favors their idea that this broad-based issue is not working. It is not for them. And therefore they want ODM to chart its own way and approach the 2027 election as a party strengthened and going for nothing short of the presidency. But then there's also this team that feels very comfortable in the broad-based arrangement and says that that is where Raila Odinga had instructed them, had wanted them, and told them to be. So these forces are coalescing around the party leader, the national chairperson, because they've been at the forefront of saying, as a party, we are in broad-based until 2027.
Yeah.
So we will see all this. But also, there will be an emerging force within ODM that will pit the deputy party leaders, the cadre of the national party chairperson, and probably some of the vice chairpersons and the various directors that would be eyeing 2032 with ODM in mind. That after 2027, who now takes whatever remains of ODM to the next general election, which is 2030. So we are also going to see that vicious fight between the deputy party leaders, the national chairperson, and the vice chairpersons and these other organizing secretary, because all of them are either in Senate or would be bidding for their second term in governorship, and 2032 becomes a blank check.
Yeah.
So there are people who are building a camp now with an eye on 2032. But also there are those who says, for us, it's 2027 first. Let's get done with it.
Yeah.
Let's reclaim our party. Let's find some people to work with and go for it. So there will be so many forces in ODM. So depending on what is your ultimate political vision with this party.
Right.
Is it 2027
or
2032?
And some of those forces is what is being referenced, and there's all of this shadow boxing about certain people who want us out of the party or who want to tear the party apart. Let's listen to Governor Abdul Swamad Sharif speaking about ODM unity, or perhaps venting.
Nina hasira, yes, nina hasira. Niiteni na nguruma, yes, na nguruma. Lakini kabla kufikiria tutatoka sisi ODM, mutatoka nyinyi, kwa sababu ODM is in our blood. And mimi namalizia nikisema hivi, and I want to state it very clearly here. Hapa, kama Nairobi is not ready for a national delegates conference, Mombasa will host a national delegates conference. And in the spirit of that national delegates conference, Oburu Odinga will be, whether you like it or not, Oburu Odinga ndiye atakayekuwa party leader wetu. Hatuwezi kupelekwa kwa hisia, my friend. Na kama muliona ya kwa mutatuletea siasa kusema ya kwa sisi tutatoka, sisi ndo wenyewe, my friend. Na kama muliona ya kwa hapa ni walkover, hapa ni stopper. Before you reach to Oburu, you will pass through me.
And he was not alone. Listen to Cabinet Secretary Ali Hassan Joho.
And I must also say here today, I defended my party kwa damu, kwa nguvu, kwa hali, kwa mali, kama ni noma noma, kama ni mbaya mbaya. It must be known here today, ODM is what it is because some of us tulijitolea kama ilikuwa mbaya mbaya. Mimi sijashikwa kama waaminifu. The only few times I was harassed by the police, it was because of ODM. The only time risasi ilinikosa, it is because of supporting Raila Amolo Odinga. And some of us joined the party ODM because we believe one day, even us from the region here, hapa Jimbo la Pwani, hata mimi, I know one day I would have the ambitions to be the president of the Republic of Kenya through ODM. Na mimi naambia msifikirie mtatoa chambo, msifikirie mtatoa kafara. Nawaambia msifikirie mtatoa kafara, msifikirie mtatoa chambo. Sisi wengine damu yetu ni moto. Ukileta twaleta, ukija tunakuja, ukitukujia tunakukujia, ukileta noma noma, ukileta mbaya mbaya. Let me say it here today. Mkinifukuza nitawafukuza, mkinikujia nitawakujia. Kikiharibika kiharibike, kama ni mbaya mbaya, kama ni noma noma.
Okay, and then there's a deputy party leader who at some point perhaps seeking to cool down the temperatures and talking about the unity in ODM.
Viongozi wa ODM, kama mnaheshimu baba, kama mlikuwa mnapenda baba, let us ensure the Ruto government implements the 10-point agenda. Hiyo mambo ingine ya kusema one term, ingine ya kusema two term, itakuwa bure kama hiyo 10 points agenda haitakuwa implemented. Mimi nataka kukosa kiongozi mmoja hapa ati anasema ati ODM itaenda vipande. I want to assure you today, ODM will remain one single strong distinct political party. Na kama iko mtu amechoka na ODM, asituletee story ya aende pole pole. ODM will always remain one single party kwa sababu ya heshima ambayo tuko nayo kwa baba Raila Amolo Odinga.
Yeah, I mean, I think he added to the whole debate. I want us to now listen to the party chair.
Kuna wale ambao wamesema ati vile baba sasa hayuko, chama inaenda kusambaratika na chama inaenda kukufa. Sisi kama viongozi wa chama tumeketi pamoja. Mwenyeji wetu hapa Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir ambaye ndiye deputy party leader wa chama hapa Coast, deputy party leader Paul Simba Arati, deputy party leader Godfrey Osotsi, waziri ambaye pia alikuwa deputy party leader Hassan Ali Joho na party leader wetu Dr. Oburu Oginga, tumeketi tukasema hakuna mmoja wetu ambaye anaweza kusimama aseme yeye ni baba ama anatoshea kiatu ya baba. Hakuna. Kwa sababu baba was a once in a generation leader. Lakini sisi tukishikana wote, tukae pamoja, tuweke miguu yetu pamoja, labda inaweza kutoshea nusu ya ile kiatu baba ametuachia.
So, kuna wale wanasema, kuna wale wanataka kusambaratisha chama, kuna wale wanataka kuvunja chama. Ni kina nani hawa, Jamila?
Very good question.
I mean, we talk about this thing like it's a mythical genie, you know, and
just name. Sema ni fulani na fulani na fulani anafanya hivi na hivi na hivi.
And then you deal with it.
Yeah, kusambaratisha chama.
Opponents can rise out of the sea.
I know. Or like some mythical mermaid or something, or someone that is. Ni nani hawa?
But if you know, when we watched the celebration, we had ODM is celebrating 20 years. This is a celebration just after the death of the mwenye chama, like the person who represented ODM, who, when you mention ODM, the person who came to mind was Raila Amolo Odinga. So 20 years of the party. But then what we saw in those 3 days was really a bit confusing for those who support ODM, or those who say they're members of ODM, or those who voted for ODM. It was confusing seeing what was going on. There was a lot of noise, first and foremost, about hawa watu ambao wanataka kufanya chama hiki na kile, hawa watu ambao wanataka kusambaratisha chama, hawa watu ambao wanataka kugawa chama. And then there's the President Ruto factor in it also, because there was what was called the founders dinner, and he was there. So watu wamechanganyikiwa, wanasema kuna nini chamani? Because if before the celebration, after the burial, of course a lot of things were said about where the party was going, mambo yakaonekana imetulia kidogo. Then after what happened during the celebrations, wasiwasi tena wameanza kuibuka between miongoni mwa wale ambao ni wafuasi wa chama hicho, tunaelekea wapi? You know, we talked about last time how over 6 million people voted for Raila Odinga in the 2022 elections. Hao ndo wanatazama hiyo, wanajiuliza tunaenda wapi? Robert, I don't know if it's possible for us to listen to Orengo, governor, saying, where does that leave ODM if you make a president in 2027?
ODM can never be the party by broad-based, for broad-based, and in the interest of broad-based. In law and in politics, there is nothing like that. That I can tell you. Tell me, if in 2027 you make Ruto the president, where does that leave ODM? Where does that leave ODM?
And then the governor went on again and talked about how the president is on who needs ODM, not ODM needing the president.
Say, Ruto needs ODM, is not ODM that needs Ruto. Sijui mnanisikia? There are people in the party, they are behaving as if ODM is the one that needs Ruto. Is Ruto that needs ODM? Kwa sababu ameshindwa. I'm not afraid to say. I'm not afraid to say. I have nothing to fear but fear. And I was very happy when Dr. Buru said ODM haitamezwa. And I'm very happy to hear what Winnie said.
Toka ODM haitamezwa, ilisema pia ODM haitabembeleza. Let's listen to him talking about how ODM will not bembeleza anyone.
Why you want to be a party of cowards? In this party, kuna wana ODM wanaanza kusema we will be in government or we form the next government. In the world of politics, you better decide what you want. You cannot go around the country telling wananchi that we'll either be in government or be part of the government. A strong party like ODM must be sure of what we want. We must be sure of what we want. And if ODM cannot produce a presidential candidate, then which party can produce a presidential candidate? Me, I would never support a position from a party which Raila has been built. Tunaanza kubembeleza. Tunaanza kubembeleza. There is no way how ODM can bembeleza Ruto. I can tell you. Hiyo ni ujinga ukubwa sana.
In Kiswahili tunasema ni sauti zinazokinzana, because we've had Governor Orengo giving his position, we've had the chair of the party, we've had CS Joho, we've had Governor Abdul Somad, and these are people who are associated with ODM Damo, and they have these very different opinions about where they are supposed to be as a party, because there are others who spoke, including Babu Wino, including SG Sifuna. So the whole thing is about tunasalia broad-based, tumezwe, ama we want to go our own way come 2027. There is no time, because umwako umeisha. So starting 2026, then now we need to start seeing what wanaenda wapi. Are you going to stay here in broad-based, as has been in the past few months, or are you going to go at it alone and have ODM maybe field a candidate? Because other than that, you'll be either be confusing your supporters, or you'll be wasting time that can be used maybe to decide where they're going and work towards that, and carry with you the 6-point-something million people, because you do not want to leave some of them on the wayside, because some of those people are the ones who are from Mukambani, for instance, that voted for Raila Odinga. Where do they stand in this whole arrangement? You have the people from the coast, you have people from Kisii, you have people from Western, all those people who consolidate that vote from Nairobi, from the main cities. Where are you taking them? So there needs to be direction yesterday. Yeah.
So what does that direction look like going forward, Linus?
There is no direction. There'll be a circle. I don't know whether moving around is direction. And,
it is motion, but as to whether it moves you forward is another thing.
And you know, the party's name starts with an O. So there's one thing that these leaders keep saying in ODM. They say we will either be the government in 2027 or we will be in government, meaning working with somebody. You see, all this drama would be answered if they told us where are they now, not 2027. And it is because of where they are now that we are in this confusion. The late Raila Odinga unfortunately passed on at the time that this broad-based question appeared to be floating, especially among the members, in terms of lack of clarity of its future. Was it supposed to go to 2027, or was it going to beyond that? And you remember there was a little statement that all of them now refer to, that if you are in doubt, just refer to what the party leader said. And I think ODM is in a simple dilemma. ODM is currently in government. So there is one wing that is saying, why do you have to come out of government in order to come in later? I mean, you're already in it. So why do you have to first step out?
Kaa tu uko ndani.
Kaa ndani tu uendelee. And that is what the heartland of the handshakers believes, that we already have we're in it. And you know, in their appraisal, they've gotten from President Ruto what they didn't get in any other administration. I mean, in terms of real power, ministries, although the Reverend from Canon's region said there are only 2 ministries, but maybe, I mean, the 2 substantive ministries, energy and treasury. So the temptation and the appetite to be elsewhere is very, very low. That if it's about being in government, then we are in there already. But I think there's a younger generation, among them Winnie and the Sifunas, who have their ears on the ground and they know the low ratings of the current political arrangement. You know, the youth out there do not think much of the current political generation right across. They are yearning for something new. They are hoping there is something else out there that is not what they are being fed with. So that is what gives them also the confidence to then start pushing, because they know the power is sweet, but how is the ground? And I think that's where the dilemma is coming in. And you know, there'll be a lot of these thermometers which will be produced as time goes by with politicians all listening to the ground. And I don't know whether James Orengo will still be talking the same language a year from now, or something will change. It'll be down to what is the ground saying. And I don't know why they keep calling people ground.
I think even as we close, it's also a moment perhaps for ODM members, even those in Parliament, to reflect. Because on a day that the President makes a State of the Nation address, where is the 10-point agenda that ODM and UDS signed on the 7th of March 2025? You scan through the entire speech. Do you see it? Where is the commitment to compensate victims of state-instigated force or abuse by police, the police service? Where is that in the State of the Nation address? And so it is very clear that ODM may have its internal wars. I do not believe that the President is very keen on how that war is fought beyond what he wants out of that conflict. Because obviously, as a political master, he wants a second term. He'll do everything possible to ensure that despite the factions, he's able to secure his votes or his support moving forward. Either support for current plans within his administration, or even the promise of support come 2027. So for me, it's about political parties thinking deeply. How is their agenda getting attained in the current arrangement of leadership?
Yep, and that's where we leave it. Jamila?
Hata sijui leo roba nani anamaliza? Haya.
Hapo tu.
Uko. Kwa ikona hii.
Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificates na short courses. Wana day na evening classes, wana courses kama plumbing, electrical engineering, building
processes involving Indian conglomerate Adani Holdings, following new information that pointed towards a corruption-ridden corporate. There was fierce excitement on the floor of the House as members of Parliament, some of whom had spent weeks defending the Adani GOK arrangement, hailed the President for being a listening head of state. One of the council deals was a 96 billion shillings contract with Ketraco to build power transmission lines. That decision has since come to haunt the government, with negotiations now underway for Kenya to pay Adani Energy's a termination fee. 12 months later, little has changed. The expansion of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport remains an intention, not a project. Recently, the President spoke in Qatar about the possibility of partnering with them on the same development a venture that could cost upwards of 200 billion shillings. And as the country reflects on the state of the nation this year, it is a moment to examine what the Adani saga has taught us about public procurement and especially public-private partnerships. For months, media and public scrutiny intensified around the Adani proposals. The government insisted the concerns were disinformation. Whistleblowers were dismissed as cynics. MPs asking legitimate questions were accused of fronting rival interests. Allegations emerged that senior government officials were eyeing kickbacks. The nation spent months debating whether this was a privately initiated proposal or a privately interested one. It later became evident that allies of top government officials were the center of pushing the Kenya Airports Authority to fast-track review and approval of the Adani JKIA proposal. Then, one morning, US media reported that authorities there had indicted Indian billionaire Gautam Adani for fraud. President Ruto cited these as, quote, new information provided by our investigative agencies and partner nations, end of quote, claiming adherence to constitutional principles of transparency and accountability. But 1 year on, key questions remain. Has the Kenya Airports Authority made any progress in procuring a developer for the JKIA expansion? Have there been any privately initiated proposals since the Adani affair? When the president says Qatar could partner with Kenya on the project, is that simply exploratory language or a sign that procurement is already at an advanced stage? In his 163-paragraph speech to Parliament, he dedicated only a single sentence to the JKIA modernization. There is no denying that JKIA urgently needs an upgrade if Kenya is to compete globally. Rwanda is already working with Qatar to build its Bugesera airport, with Qatar owning up to 60% of the new facility. But Kenya has its own rules, its own laws, and a constitution that anchors everything on transparency and accountability. Kenyans cannot be faulted for their skepticism. They have been abused too many times. They are currently repaying loans amounting to 12 trillion shillings, at least what is publicly declared. Big projects have repeatedly been tainted by corruption. Access to information has been restricted from the very beginning of such undertakings. Kenyans feel the strain and they are determined to avoid any unnecessary future burdens. Today, taxpayers feel overpoliced, heavily taxed and subjected to strict compliance mechanisms. Asking questions about procurement is not pettiness. It is responsible citizenship. Local suppliers must operate under electronic procurement systems and electronic tax invoicing through e-teams, leaving no room to hide. When billions are at stake, there cannot be a different, more lenient standard for government. If authorities demand strict compliance in revenue collection, demanding the same discipline in expenditure is not too much to ask. Seeking transparency when taking on debt, whether through public-private partnerships, securitization of future revenues, or a sovereign wealth fund, is not pedantic. It is simply common sense. And that is my sense tonight.
Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificates na short courses. Wana day na
They weren't just saving souls, they were saving the nation. During the struggle for multi-party democracy, the church marched shoulder to shoulder with the young Turks. And in the push for a new constitution, they were the nation's moral compass. Kenya's history is rich, replicate even, with unforgettable moments where religious leaders led from the front. Chaplains of liberations, bishops of justice, imams of truth. But sadly, the story today is different. In the last decade, the once booming prophetic voice of Kenya's religious organizations has grown faint, almost drowning out completely where it matters most. The thunderous voices of Bishop Alexander Muge, Bishop Henry Okulu, Reverend Timothy Njoya, Archbishop Ndingi Mwana Anzeki, Sheikh Khalid Balala are now more history lessons than guiding lights. Globally, religion has always been a force in critiquing injustice, mobilizing citizens, challenging state power, and championing democratic reforms. Yet here at home, religious bodies have slipped into a troubling silence, an era of see no evil, speak no evil, and hearing no evil. And even when they do speak, their voices are scattered, timid, and easily lost in the political noise. Where are the stinging sermons on social justice? Where are the fiery spiritual reflections on governance and integrity? Where is the pulpit that once rattled the state and awakened the public? One can argue that Kenya today is not Moi's Kanu era, but religion doesn't only respond, it shapes consciousness. That is the essence of Kairos theology, that is the spirit of the prophetic ministry. Allow me to take you back to Kenya's Cairo document of 1991, a bold theological reflection on the state of the nation. It confronted corruption, ethnicity, human rights abuses, electoral malpractices, and economic injustices. It was a moral mirror and a rallying call. Dear religious leaders, you can still reclaim that prophetic role. The Damascus moment is not lost. Kenya is still yearning for a unified, unwavering moral voice. It cannot be that your voices only rise when your interests are threatened, loud at fundraisers, and silent on national crisis. You must rise above partisan comfort and speak when it is necessary, not just when it is convenient. Revive the Kairos spirit. Dust off the document anchored at NCCK. Let it guide your sermons, your pastoral letters, and your collective conscience, because Kenya cannot afford a silent pulpit. Not now, not when corruption thrives, inequality widens, and public morality is tested daily. Find the prophetic fire again. Let every sermon challenge the preacher and the congregation alike. This is your watershed moment. Redefine your mission and reclaim your identity as theologians of the people, for the people, with the people. That is my bond tonight.
Je, umemaliza kidato cha 4? Una wasiwasi utaanzia wapi hatua ya pili? Hujui ni ufanye aje ili kuhitimu katika tajriba yako? YMCA National Training Institute inakukaribisha kujiunga kwenye diploma courses, certificate na short courses.
This week, our cameras took us to Dukana in Marsabit County, a place where hunger is not just a crisis, but a generation-to-generation inheritance. A place where drought is a way of life, and a place where leadership, quite frankly, is missing in action. We met Mzee Bobo Sora, a 70-year-old man, sitting quietly inside his manyata, blind, frail, starving, and abandoned by systems meant to protect him. This is a man who once walked proudly across the vast plains with more than 200 goats. Today, he cannot even see the 5 goats he has left, and he says, life has lost meaning. Imagine being so overwhelmed by hunger and despair that death feels easier than waking up to another day. But as painful as Bobo's story is, it is not the only one. Such sad incidents are repeated across Laisamis, Kor, and Bala. Children born into hunger, mothers skipping meals, community health workers unpaid for 14 months, dispensaries with empty shelves, and a county where lighting a fire to cook is a luxury, not a routine. And so the question must be asked, where are the leaders of Marsabit County? Where is the MCA of Dukana? Where is the Member of Parliament? The woman representative? Where is the senator? Where is the governor? All those elected with promises of transformation and devolution? One woman in Dukana said it plainly. They only come when they want our votes. It is a damning statement, but an honest one. While families in Dukana boil maize and beans as their only meal in 24 hours, their leaders are nowhere to be seen. Perhaps they're in Nairobi. Perhaps they're in county offices, far from the dust and desperation. But certainly, they're not where they are needed most. It is a stark, painful reminder of leadership failure, an indictment of elected officials who have abandoned the very people whose votes put them in office. According to the Red Cross, more than 740,000 children under 5 in Kenya are acutely malnourished, and over 100,000 pregnant, unlactating women need urgent treatment. These are not just numbers. They are a reflection of a country that continues to respond to predictable crises with surprise, and leaders who continue to act like drought is breaking news event. Northern Kenya has endured drought after drought for decades. Communities lose everything before they have a chance to recover, and yet the leadership remains reactive, never proactive, silent when it matters, and loud only during elections. As we tell Mzee Bobo Sora's story, as we show the hunger and desperation in Bala, we must confront an uncomfortable truth. Devolution means nothing if the devolved units cannot even protect the lives of their citizens. The old are dying quietly, the young are growing up hungry, and the leaders, the very ones entrusted with billions of shillings in county budgets, are absent. Which leaves us with a final haunting question. If leadership does not show up in life and death moments like this, then what exactly is it for? And that is my memo.
Heaviness in the air lately. Not the kind that comes from bad weather, but the kind that comes from bad politics. Kenya has entered a strange season, a season of permanent campaigning. And I'm not just talking about the upcoming by-elections. I mean, everywhere you turn, leadership is on the stump. In churches, in markets, at funerals, at roadside stops. There seems to be no gathering too small, no moment too sacred, no community too weary to be pulled into yet another political performance. We have a president who thinks nothing of climbing onto the roof of his car to shout two-term to a crowd of people buying tomatoes. A head of state who casually tells Kenyans that unnamed others hawana akili, that they have no brains. Words spoken lightly from a microphone, but felt heavily in a country already fraying at the edges. And in Mbeere North, a simple by-election has morphed into a showdown between a former deputy president and the current one, each fighting to crown himself king of the mountain over a parliamentary seat. A seat whose biggest problem should be water, roads, or youth unemployment, not national ego contests and power projections. So I find myself asking, what are we doing? What is this? And how is any of it good for a country that is already struggling to breathe? Because you see, politics does not exist in a vacuum. It sets the tone. And the tone we have now, the noise, the chest thumping, the insults, filters into the national mood, and from there, into the economy. Every economist will tell you, markets run on confidence, on stability, on predictability. But when leaders behave like candidates instead of statesmen, when every weekend is a rally, when every microphone is a chance to attack opponents instead of addressing policy, when governance feels like theater, what message are we sending to the country, to business owners, to investors, to ordinary Kenyans wondering how to plan their next month, their next loan, The next, school fees payment. You see, politics creates the emotional climate of a nation. And right now, that climate feels hot, unsettled, and unpredictable. You can feel it in conversations in matatus. You can hear it in boardrooms. You can see it in the slow pace of new investments. You can sense it in families who are anxious, tired, and unsure. Because when a country is in campaign mode, it cannot be in governance mode. And when leaders treat every day like a political rally, the country absorbs that instability. It becomes jittery, reactive, suspicious, divided. Social cohesion suffers. The economy